NEWMETAFLESH. Anatomy of the body as a liminal interface and disembodiment of desire. In the contemporary hyperconnected context, the body is no longer simply biological matter, but a symbolic surface, a semiotic prosthesis, an archive of desirability. Our interactions have shifted from our sole corporeality to a network that branches into other spaces, decentralizing interactions and fragmenting the ways in which we maintain them. Dating apps, sexting, voice messages that are too long, or characters without a voice. Compulsive voyeurism directed both toward others and toward ourselves. This essay explores the transformation of sexual desire and eroticism within a relational space increasingly mediated by screens, algorithms, and self-narratives. In this scenario, a new metaflesh emerges, a phantasmatic tissue born from excess representation, dopaminergic craving, and the compulsion to perform one's own identity. Every time I look at you, I feel like I'm turning blue. Every time I look at you, I see your eyes spilling glue. Want to be seen, full of my personas, acting like you're here. Everything's performance, building my own panopticon, building my own panopticon. If I fall down, if I'm so down. This flows in and out of me. This shows who I wanna be. Just with my lens, like diamond dreams. Found myself digging by my dreams. And now it flows in and out of me. This shows who I wanna be. But in my face, I'm alive. I craft myself, I'm like real. Oh my God. done, I'm done. I project myself on this time. I will see myself upside down. Look inside of me, I'm all over this place. Look inside of me, will you feel the space? And I look my knee to the scene one. Here's my ID, overriding my face. So out of my skin till I feel this play. Recognizing how you feel to me in this place. My gaze, shading how you feel. In these ways, all you might believe. Oh my God, eyes on fire. It's not done, I'm done. I project myself on the sun. I will see myself upside down. Upside simulacra in cyberluminance. Social interaction has always had a dual function. On an evolutionary level, relational exchange is necessary for survival, insofar as, among other things, it guarantees the creation of a network of support and resources for the individual. In more individual terms, it is a way to know ourselves through reciprocal feedback, to explore and integrate those elements that will construct our identity. At a certain point, however, the digital world enters the scene, and with it, the possibility to be full-time curators of our perceived image. Thus, in the process of personal branding and performance of our identity via pixels, the trajectory of the other's gaze collides with our own, constructing a corridor of virtual mirrors in which it's easy to get lost and no longer recognize the original figures. It follows that even in the seductive game, we are led to exercise total control over how we want to be perceived, which part of our body to expose, from which angle and with what lighting, what to suggest about our lifestyle and our character, ensuring that the results come as close as possible to what we consider gratifying and interesting to observe, becoming a pure simulation of a model within a dimension that no longer has anything real, but constitutes that condition which Baudrillard defines as hyperreality. The real can no longer surpass the model, of which it is nothing but the alibi. It is no longer possible to begin from the real and fabricate the unreal, the imaginary from the data of the real. The process will instead be the inverse. It will be a matter of realizing the centered situations, models of simulation, and striving to give them the colors of the real, of the banal, of lived experience, to reinvent the real as fiction, precisely because the real has disappeared from our lives. Hallucination of the real, of lived experiences, of the everyday but reconstructed, sometimes down to the details of an unsettling strangeness, reconstructed like an animal or a vegetal reserve, exposed to view with transparent precision, and yet without substance, derealized in advance, hyper-realized. The result of this echo of images is what Letico, in an analysis for morning, defines as infinite self-gaze, a perpetual state of self-observation and evaluation in which one's subjectivity becomes increasingly matter, creating an intersection between identity, expression, and perception.
Rinse.
Identity is another other. Ahead of myself is where I found mother.
Eyes crossing my last highway nightmare, thinking of perception I'm going under. Reaching myself for the reaching of it. Reaching out is a game for two. Reaching myself for the reaching of it. What if my perception was twisted too? Presence is real when you're looking away. Looking away like I'm hacking my brain. When you see me, is everything I need. Reaching myself for the reaching of you. Reaching out is a game for two. Reaching myself for the reaching myself for the reaching of you. Reaching out is a game for two. Reaching myself for the reaching of you. What if my perception is wasted too? Through this cold shattered glass too. Sometimes my face feels like yours. It's you. I can see myself. It's been too Your body weight is cold, my desire is deep. Vibrations are bold, feeling my knees. You draw the lines, watching through the glass, while you drift away, knowing it will crash. Control to my body, Losing control of the steering wheel. I'm burning through the glass, everything I know. I'm burning through the glass, everything I want. As the line of demarcation between external and internal gaze becomes increasingly blurred, the different sources of positive reinforcement and dopaminergic boosts on which we feed as psychodynamic individuals also begin to merge, overlapping multiple cognitive functions responsible for sustaining the construction of identity and relationships. The role of dopamine in the psychobiological mechanism of motivation and reward is fundamental, to the point of also modifying our social behaviors, reiterating those processes that have produced dopamine release following an immediate reward, as happens very easily in social media interaction. Seeking a like, a comment, or a message, we feel gratified. Our brain releases dopamine, reinforcing the neural pathways that led to that result. For this reason, we feel the compulsion to continuously check our notifications, hoping to find reward. And it is precisely this instability of the outcome that reinforces the behavior by generating craving. As Tristan Harris, former design ethicist for Google, states, if you want to maximize addictiveness, all tech designers have to do is link a user's action to a variable reward. Addiction is maximized when the reward rate is most variable. The interesting aspect is that dopamine release is much more intense when the interaction concerns ourselves. From a study conducted by Diana Aitamir and Jason P. Mitchell at Harvard, it emerges that people engaged in a dialogue spend up to 40% of the conversation in the act of giving information about themselves. And in the context of social media, this behavior reaches 80%. According to this research, dopaminergic reward related to self-referential thoughts is perceived as a greater when these insights are communicated to another person at the same level as primary rewards, such as food and sex. What we obtain is this mediated schizoerotic game, is a sort of obsessive disorder that compulsively drives us to verify the performativity of our meta-identity, spending more time reviewing our own content rather than that of those we desire, enacting a form of autoeroticism based on how we imagine ourselves being perceived, and craving is confirmation. In this way, not only self-perception, but also the final object of desire within a social interaction undergoes a displacement. If all the outputs of a new virtual encounter are aimed at substantiating and sculpting the simulacrum that is the meta-identity, the ultimate pleasure will no longer be the result of the sexualized interaction between the bodies of the two subjects, but the confirmation for both that their own simulacrum is performing its functions as it should, gratifying each other in a dual, yet reality choral, monologue between reflected gazes that constantly reproduce themselves. It is precisely this functional and productivity tension that outlines desire. From the perspective of the desiring machines of Deleuze and Guattari, according to which desire is flow and production generated by partial objects that come into contact, we are rubbing in a loop against our own threshold, delimited by the thumbs of the technical device that conveys enjoyment. The medium becomes desire in itself insofar as it is a partial object, a liminal hole into which we lean in order to feed our meta-identity in an egoic exchange of self-conception, in which desire toward the other is often nothing more than masturbation over the accumulation of our own simulacrum, taking pleasure each time we see its desirability recognized. In some cases, this need to perceive and validate our existence through the perception of the other leads to the development of a state of limerence toward the other. The term limerence was coined by the psychologist Dorothy Tanov in her 1979 book Love and Limerence, The Experience of Being in Love. Tanov created the word to describe an emotional state of obsessive infatuation that goes beyond attraction to another person. Rather, it's a deeply intrusive fixation, often accompanied by an intense desire of reciprocity regarding the other's erotic romantic interests. In this state of being, a particular object of desire therefore emerges, one that has no body but is pure erotic attention from another towards oneself. This is what in the literature is defined by the American psychologist and researcher as the limerent object, hereafter LO. The limerent subject lives in a state of perpetual apprehension and, as demonstrated by recent research on the related neurochemical conditions, finds themselves in a mental state overlapping with and often correlated to obsessive-compulsive disorder. This occurs especially in cases where the LO is an unstable presence in the subject's life, making themselves physically and emotionally available only at certain moments, and thus generating a fixation in the limerent subject, because the self-perception they are constructing around their own desirability and their own desire toward the LO is threatened by this discontinuity. Thus, in their erotic emotional relationship, the desire for confirmation definitively overrides the object of limerence with the objet PTA de Lacan identifies in every substance of the tension toward the other. In this overriding, the result is a reversal. The LO is the fundamental desire, but insofar as it is the gaze of the other meant to confirm our desirability, the real idealization is the one we first perform upon ourselves. In the digital context in which dopaminergic rewards and personal bonds are fragmented into a symbolic system of micro-interactions that open onto further ruminations and hypotheses, we can define this state as cyberlimerence, a state of rumination and compulsive checking, aimed at confirming one's own desirability and the functionality of the ideal that each person has configured, while the other is unaware, within the digital context. Every missing like, unwatched story, message left unseen, put us into crisis, the substance of the simulacrum of one's own identity, which in order to survive needs to be fed by confirmations and positive reinforcements. In fact, even when in the physical world the erotic ideal is destroyed, there is often a sort of resistance. One is almost willing to forego the real encounter but to preserve the virtual interaction, which often remains unchanged in its sexual charge, even though there has been a clash with a reality far less gratifying than what was expected. Thus, as happens in some cases, one tends to attribute characteristics that have little to do with the other's identity, even when we are aware of it, simply from the functional perspective of satisfying a narrative useful to the survival of the simulacrum and of the desire it represents. In that obscure object of desire by Buñuel, this dynamic is represented very well. The identity of Conchita, whom we can identify as the LO, escapes and changes from within, literally changing identity and face in the eyes of the protagonist who desired her. Both are trapped in this vicious cycle, chasing each other while at the same time actively reiterating tension that generates their desire. The same dynamic occurs for those in the cyberliminal state. The desire for the LO becomes stronger the more it's perceived as unstable, and takes the form that is most effective in producing gratifying images. As Bataille states in Erotism, we are fragmented and fragmentary beings. In fusion with the other, we rediscover primordial continuity, that one from which everything originates. Technology, to a place, to a certain extent, and from a certain perspective, plays a role in this condition, insofar as we imagine the fusion between the threshold that composes it as an annihilation on the interface. Paradoxically, moving from this continuity, given by the plethora and hypersegmentation of one's own identity, to definitive continuity. Addiction on down, feeling boys in my mind. Come to me at night. Can you feel inside? Desire how to fight. Hold your pixels tight. Feel my feeling right. Feeling the rules of life. To my life. I just need a close to scream. To project myself on. You could be my cyberlane. You could be my cyberlane. I just need miracles and scream to project myself on. You could be my cyberlane. You could be my cyberlane. Identity is based on reaction. You know, as a similar reflection. Softcore, grindcore, hardcore. Softcore, grindcore, hardcore. Push your fingers to the core. You'll be brought behind the floor. If we are up on vintage, who are we behind and for? I just need miracles and scream to project myself on. You could be myself. of the body in a new meta-flesh. In this factory of identity and desire, tension does not move toward an object to be possessed, but to expand in multiple directions and necessities like a rhythm, generating new realities, decentralized and fluid. The object of our libido becomes increasingly abstract, increasingly meta, composed of tensions, expectations, and imaginaries rather than flesh and saliva. The characters that compose the word is typing become more erotic than scent. The timed photo icon more exciting than its content. The elaboration on the content more overwhelming than the act itself. The simulacrum has once again become denser and more real than reality it imitates, producing excess skin, new meta-flesh. A sclerotic surplus born from the accumulation of continuous tension, therefore non-production, which becomes the flesh of the untouched, a residue of the unconsumed, the extension of the desire for continuity and therefore for death. This anti-productive field of intensity, it what allows the delusional body without organs to become a field of potentiality and perpetual becoming, in which desire is not defined by fixed structures and meanings. The antithesis generated by the digital membrane made of the reinforcements and the return gases discussed in the previous chapter comes to generate an accumulation of phantasmatic tissue, like a keloid, and abnormal scarlism, a process that, in order to fill the void, has hyperproduced its antiproductive function. A condition almost necessary for the simulacrum, just as it is necessary for desire, which in order to remain such must never be satisfied, but only perpetuated. Reproduced and stratified, thus the object of desire itself undergoes a shift, and the eroticism no longer arises from the interaction between the two bodies, but slips into the passages, caressing the edges, remaining on the thresholds. Perspective, therefore, it is necessary to identify which required adaptation the new meta-flesh is responding to, and how to reintegrate corporeality in a new and political way, subverting expectations about our bodies. What remains, then, is a mythopoietic and ethical gesture to reimagine a new erotism of the threshold, in which contact is not consumption, but exploration, in which the interface, once again, becomes a rite of passage, not only a screen. It is not a matter of returning to the real body at all costs, but of inventing new forms of relation and exchange that take these changes into account, in which desire once again becomes relation and creation and not only mirror. To keep alive the spasm toward the outside, as long as there is a point of contact, as long as there is a tear through which one may, in whatever way, be traversed.
Rinse.
Disappearing is persistent. What you forget, won't repeat. Never forget about you. Let me focus on the limit. Say your desire. Don't be afraid to lay your body die. Your desire, our intention, full potential. Open your eye, 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 open your eye. Simulacra, simulacra, simulacra. Thresholds revealing light, projection reaching in the night. Project the shadows come alive. Don't be afraid to let your body die. I am sign, your desire, our intention, full potential. Open your eye, open your eye, open your eye, open your eye.
Rinse.